One thing I need you to do for me is kind of break down the Simona Halep story, uh, positive drug test, going through all sorts of court dates. As of now, and correct me where I'm wrong, she is suspended or serving a suspension for 4 years, trying to get overturned. A lot of moving parts, a lot of factors, a lot of other humans involved. Give us a quick backstory, and then where do we stand in current time? Because Kim Kleisters has some feelings about this, and I want to kind of set up and give some context so she can kind of roam freely with her thoughts in the next segment.
Oh man, how you'll stop me if we go too deep in the woods.
No, go for it.
So let's see. I have no notes in front of me, but all right, it's 2022. Simona Halep, former number one Wimbledon champion. Very strange year for Simona Halep. She latches on with Patrick Mouratoglou, and she goes all in. She fires her team. She completely changes her base, her agent, her publicist, her coach. And at the French Open, very strange event. This is an event she's won before, and she has an on-court panic attack that had never happened before her. She had a very good Wimbledon. She recovers. She wins Toronto, big title. Things are looking great. She goes to the U.S. Open, loses in the first round to a Ukrainian qualifier, and then fails a drug test. And
Did
this,
she fail it at? Wasn't it before? Didn't she fail the test before the Open, or was it actually at the U.S. Open that she
I
failed
think
it?
it was administered at the Open,
Okay.
and she had not, I think she had not played Cincinnati. It's very strange. And in the law, sometimes we talk about good facts and bad facts. A lot of bad facts here. The substance was Ruxadustat. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. Which it's sort of used to increase blood flow. I mean, it's pretty obvious why this would be considered performance enhancing. She denies any and all use, and yet both on her forms and then I think more critically when she is interviewed, she doesn't mention that she had this supplement that she suddenly started taking. Her theory is that this was a tainted supplement. We've heard that before, but it's very strange. You would take a supplement that's so specific and niche and boutique; they don't sell it over the counter. You take this supplement, you fail a drug test, you also lose a first round match to a qualifier having won the big event 10 days ago. And then in the interview, you don't mention this. So
The
that's
interview
not
meaning when you have to so when you do a drug test, if you're on any sort of medication, they encourage you to write it
right.
down so that they have kind of full context of what you're taking. So if I would even put down Advil
Exactly.
when I
Right.
was at the end of it, or let's give a peek in here after Wimbledon. Even you lose a five setter, you go in there, you would take a blood test, you would take a urine test. Immediately after, you could do the same thing out of competition where they just knock on your front door and you have to be kind of available on call. You give them an hour a day of where you are. So I always put like 5 to 6 in the morning because it's the only time I could guarantee that's where I would be. If I took if Brooklyn and I wanted to go somewhere for a night, I would have to include where we went, what hotel, and the room number. That's how intense this process was. So you are programmed to provide detail from a very early age in this process, and it's tedious, but is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. Keep in mind, we're in a strict liability world. So essentially, you fail a doping test and it's on you, is basically what that means. But as you say, I mean, I've heard athletes to everything. I mean, birth control pills, and they get exactly Advil. Um, Remember, it was Maria Sharapova's failure to list meldonium that was adverse to her case. But anyway, so Halep doesn't mention this. Then she gets
Well, I
interviewed
just
after
sorry
the
to
positive. Yeah,
it does warrant mentioning like the Maria thing. Like also just for some context, took something that was legal December 31st, illegal January 1st.
right.
All of these things that you take or supplements that you take, and you can argue the merits of meldonium or whatever. That's another rabbit hole. But to me, I'm a dummy, and I'm taking something that has an R, an M, an X, and it has 14 vowels, and it's supposed to help me recover.
Yeah, and it's sufficiently enough off-label that it comes from a specialty lab. You can't just go to CVS and get it. I think most athletes would say, "Boy, that's the kind of thing I ought to be listing on my form, and I certainly ought to be listing when I'm interviewed by the authorities after my positive test." That didn't happen. There were also these discrepancies in Simona Halep's biological passport. I'm not sure that should be seen as a separate offense because, in theory, this banned substance could have triggered these discrepancies. Long story short, the tennis authority, this outside integrity agency, wants 6 years. Halep, she protests and proclaims her innocence. She ends up getting 4 years, and essentially she has appealed. She sued the manufacturer of the supplement company. Again, it's a lot. It's a very strange fact pattern. She had her own experts. At one point, one of her own experts said sort of oxygen and cardiovascular strength didn't matter in tennis, which seemed very strange, especially for a player who you know, achieved what she did in large part because she was such a good mover and so well conditioned. It's the whole thing. It's a very strange case. The bottom line is, we're on a year and a half now. Her appeal is pending. She hasn't hit a ball. She's now in her 30s. I don't know how much we want to talk about coaching, but she took this supplement at the behest of Patrick Mortoglu, her new coach. If this is any other sport, right? If you're at a UFC gym and you're a UFC fighter and your trainer tells you to take something and you test positive, that trainer has some explaining to do. If you're a college athlete, you fail a doping test and you say, my strength and conditioning coach said to take this supplement, that strength and conditioning coach doesn't have a job in college athletics anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It's a
This is
little
a big point.
strange. I mean, I don't know sort of where we want to go with this. There's a lot going on here. I think some of this is we're talking about a former number one player. She beat Serena Williams in the Wimbledon final. This is a player who was, very well regarded, somebody who was very measured, very professional in how she ran her career. So everything that happened in 2022, at a minimum, it was very chaotic and off brand. It's a strange fact pattern. She has a very good lawyer in Howard Jacobs, who's based in LA and is, represented Marion Jones. I mean, she's not scrimped on her counsel, but I gotta say, looking at this objectively, this is an awfully tough case for the athlete, I think. And even if she can get this 4 years knocked down, she turns 32 this year. Those are two big lost years. There's a bit of a stigma. I don't know if we do see her again, I don't know what player emerges, but it's a very strange case, and she has her defenders, and she claims, look, I don't know anything about this. I'd love to have a defense. I'd love to say it was my grandma's pasta. Remember we had that, or it was my hair loss medication. It was tainted meat. It was a conjoined twin. And Halep's basically saying, I got no idea. I don't know how it's gotten in my system.
I don't take hair loss medication. You do.
Yeah. The she
Whatever,
has
dude.
she has no alibi. I'm not going there. She
Should have started taking it earlier, shouldn't I,
Yeah.
Mike? Yeah, I feel like I was late to but okay, that's actually
tainted meat.
to show you how psychotic, like not psychotic, but how intense tennis drug. Like I couldn't actually take hair loss medication until I retired. That's a true story. Like that actually is a thing. You couldn't take Sudafed while you were on tour because it has some stimulant. Like that's how intense and responsible you have to be in tennis, for better or worse.
Yeah, I mean, my larger issue with doping, and feel free to weigh in here, is it's really tough, and I have great sort of sympathy for the athletes, and it's a pain in the ass, and we've seen a lot of cases where the athlete has been exonerated. We don't really hear about much about that. We hear about the initial pop. At the same time, if you want a clean sport and you think that athletes need to compete on a level playing field, yeah, you gotta go after your post match defeat and have someone put a needle in your arm, and you've got to make your availability public for 1 hour a day. It sucks, and I hear the complaints, and I have great sympathy, but I don't know what the alternative is if we want a clean sport.
Yeah, I mean it is what it is. There are going to be some things that stink when you're trying to figure out fairness. Basically, is essentially what we're shooting for.